But because it became too difficult, that vacation, that illness, giving ourselves a reprieve, feeling like we've accomplished something, now makes it more difficult. If you were able to do it once, what's the difference now? Just get back on your routine. Get back to being consistent. You were happier. You were more fulfilled. You were goal-driven. Like, what is the matter with you? All right, welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I'm your host, Araujo. Please check in if you're here with me today. And it's another beautiful Monday, right? Another beautiful Monday to be thankful for all the things we do have, all the things we've created thus far. And many of you are here for different reasons. Some of you may be here looking to get inspired, which is okay. I hope that you get the inspiration you need to pull off the things that you need to pull off. Some of you are committed to getting back on your game. Maybe it's been a few weeks since you've joined me. Maybe it's one of those things where you got off your game in general, and you're just needing to get inspired to get back on it. Some of you are on a high and just want to simply magnify your results. And some of you, unfortunately, are feeling hopeless, desperate, and afraid, feeling the burdens and the consequences of inaction. And these are all real feelings that we go through, right? We go through our highs and our lows. And, identifying those behaviors, identifying those feelings are the key to being able to do something about it. Being in this place of it's just happening to me, it's never going to, turn. It's never going to, I'm never going to create something that I've always wanted. Those are just temporary feelings, right? And it's usually because, we didn't do the things we said. We tried to avoid the work. And yet others are here simply just to support the story that you're doing everything in your power, and yet nothing seems to be going your way. And that is something that I think I was more in tune with, right? I always took responsibility for what I was doing, but I was quick to point out that I'm doing everything possible. I'm showing up every day. I'm going to every meeting. I'm going to the gym. I'm doing all these things. I'm at home every night with the family. I'm always around. And I didn't see that there was layers beyond that. I didn't realize that was just a story I was telling myself to make myself feel better, so that when the results didn't come out to the way I wanted, I had something to write on. It couldn't have been me per se, right? It was always something outside of me. Even though I took responsibility for showing up every day, yet I didn't take responsibility for the things I did outside of those times, right? Yes, we are all great marketers. Yes, we are all in the gym. Yes, we're there for our family, but it's what you do outside of those specific moments. And it reminds me a lot like those individuals that go to the gym every day, but yet no results are even even come together, right? In fact, it looks like they're going back the other way, where they're gaining more weight or they're getting more out of shape. And it's like, how is this possible? And in their minds, they're thinking, I'm doing everything possible. I go to the gym every day. But they're not accounting for all the things that they're not doing outside of the gym. And that's where we have to really look at why we decide to participate, why our business is failing to grow, why our marriage is falling apart, why our kids hate us, are not communicating with us. It's all the things that you're doing outside of that one moment. And we can all say that, well, I'm home every day, I talk to my kids, but it's like there's many layers to the story that we tell. And we have to be able to identify that and say, okay, maybe what I'm doing right now is not creating the results that I want because I'm not going deeper. I'm actually just offsetting. I'm just going through the motions. And what happens there is being able to just really look at if our business is not working, maybe showing up to these mindset masteries isn't enough. Maybe getting inspired or maybe participating for the 10, 15, 20 minutes that I'm here, it's only a fraction of what you have to do after this call. Going on a date night, maybe it's not working. Your marriage is still not working the way you'd love it, the way you desire it. Maybe it's beyond that date night. It's all the things that you're not doing. So we have to really start analyzing and looking at our behaviors and looking at what happens, because somewhere along the line we stop being consistent. And we're relying on this, this Hail Mary of a swing to get us the results that we want. Yet we don't realize we've been striking out day after day after day after day. Yeah, we're showing up to the plate, but it doesn't matter because the results are there. We're not being able to produce what we want. So these Hail Marys got to go out the window. And it's like, okay, it's the small, consistent things. The same things we talk about on a regular basis. That showing up and being intentional about what we want is going to create the lifestyle we desire. It never comes on the back of just swinging for that Hail Mary. And I've been there many times. And it's never worked. And I don't know anybody that it's worked for. But it's being consistent on what we do for ourselves, what we do for our mind, what we do for our bodies, for our health, for our families. Like those are the things that are ultimately going to create the lifestyle that you truly want. And, one of the things that I realized, like I went on this trip with my daughters and Carla this weekend, and we had an absolute blast. Now, there are some stories in there we're going to share on a different podcast, but, we had a blast. And I sent them a text this morning. I said, thank you. And it was to my daughters and to Carla because we were well connected. We had just an absolute great time. And we weren't escaping our realities. We were doing this just to have fun. And I love that because before, our vacations were almost to, or at least for Carla and I, was to escape our reality. We can leave our lives behind and go on a drinking binge and on an eating binge, and everything was going to be all right when we got back home, only to make things worse. And one of the things that I've realized over the years is one, the right deposits towards your family, to yourself, you feel good. You're going to give the very best to everything that you do. And there were some situations during this weekend that really challenged us to a core that had to do with our reservations, that had to do with, the hospitality. But it was the core of why we wanted to go out there was just to spend time with each other. And that's exactly what we try to focus on. And there's many things that were trying to make us deviate from that. But because we are consistent on what we do, we were able to realize that, hey, this is pulling us in a direction we don't want to go. We have to shift right now. We have to recalibrate. We have to recommit to why we got here. So the same thing goes, like when coming back from a vacation or coming back from an illness or an injury, it's realizing that there are certain things that are going to get you to the lifestyle you've always wanted, the lifestyle that will create the happiness and the overall fulfillment. And we all have choices because we can all be consistent. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it with the challenges that Carla has put together with Do the Work. I've seen it firsthand with the businesses that have grown tremendously. And I've also seen from a third party, right, from the outside perspective of those individuals that almost sabotage that growth. And this is just from what I've seen. And I'm able to analyze those things because, again, I've seen the beginning and I've seen the better version. And we talked about that last week, the better versions. And then I see this small decline or this consistent decline of going back to our lowest form of habit, which was the person that wasn't happy with their body, wasn't happy with their business, wasn't happy with their marriage. And I see this firsthand, right? And one of the things that throws people off is things that are out of routines. I think we can all be consistent with certain routines, but it's can you be consistent when something tries to knock you off your game? That shows real capacity. That shows real abilities, skill set, right? It really challenges your mindset. Like this is when things are good because in any condition, in the right conditions, we can all excel. And I think that's why I was so hooked into and almost addicted to these seminars, because under the right conditions, I felt stellar. I felt like I can accomplish anything. But it was coming back home that I realized nothing has really changed because I haven't changed. Under the right conditions, we can all excel. But it's what do you do when you're challenged to the core, when you're challenged from those, from those conditions? Because I think that, when you feel good, you eat the right things and you have to go to the gym the next morning or do something for your business, I think most of us can do it. But can you still do it after a family emergency? Can you still do it after an injury? Can you still do it after a vacation? And I think that's where most people fall apart. Is because they're too lax on themselves and say, I deserve this. Like I've worked so hard to be here, like, this vacation was much needed, so I'm going to wait until the following Monday to go back on my routines. And what we don't realize is that it gets that much more difficult as you allow the days to go by where you're not back on your routine with your self-care, when you're not back in your routine with your business, when you're not back in your routines with your responsibilities of the household and the responsibilities of your relationship. We start going back to our lowest form of habit. And this happens often, right? You'll see those individuals that are committed and it was just one small vacation or one day off or overindulgence one day that just completely unravels everything. I mean, they were just a ticking time bomb by all measures. And that really shows capacity. Is like, can you do that after something like that happens? Because that's what breaks consistency. Again, vacations, illness, injury, family emergencies, get-togethers, overindulgence, right? Falling off the wagon. Like alcoholics can go 2 years, right? They'll say things like, I've been sober for 2 years, for 3 years, and it's always that one night that completely unravels everything, and all of a sudden everything just goes out the window. And it's hard, and I get it. It's tough. Getting back into those routines and filling out this 12-week target book is so difficult. Like, I'd rather keep a track of it up here, but I know if I just keep a track of it up in my head, I'm not going to do everything that's required. But this is geared to do one thing. It's just to get you back into a routine, to be consistent so that you can ultimately be the more powerful you, the more powerful version of yourself. And that's all it is. And we have that polarity, always the weaker version of ourselves and the more powerful version of ourselves. But those that decide to get back into the routine immediately, I could have decided to say, hey, wait a minute, I just got back yesterday, I'm tired. I deserve this day off, or I can go right back into my routine. And that's exactly what happened this morning. It sucked. It was a burden. I'll be honest with you, it was a burden. But I'm so glad I did. Because it just reminds me that I have a certain standard that I live by. And we confuse ourselves, I think, sometimes, right? Because we say we're committed, and sometimes one little thing can knock us completely off our game. And it's like, how do we end up here? How do we end up in the biggest fight ever? How did, I end up getting 10 pounds or out of shape? How come I can't wake up early in the morning again? And I see this. I see this with our clients. I see this with our agents. It's like, just get back on your game because you've already realized what the greater version of yourself is. But because it became too difficult, that vacation, that illness, giving ourselves a reprieve, feeling like we've accomplished something, now makes it more difficult. If you were able to do it once, what's the difference now? Just get back on your routine. Get back to being consistent. You were happier. You were more fulfilled. You were goal-driven. Like, what is the matter with you? Why make it so difficult? And the difficulty comes because we revert back. We allowed ourselves some leeway. And guess what? Some of you may be just like me. I can't afford to give myself any leeway because I'm dangerous when I give myself too much leeway. I make bad decisions. That's just part of I don't know where that came from. So I understand the consequences behind that, though. So I don't allow myself to veer onto that path. Boredom creates bad habits. Boredom creates bad decisions. Complacency and mediocrity, all those things create the things that you ultimately don't want. That's why we have to continue to push ourselves. And pushing ourselves after an illness, after a vacation, after a family emergency, after, breaking your consistency, all those things is so important. But yet many of us disregard it. And it is a snowball effect. It really is. So you just have to, kind of decide which direction you're going to go. Is it at the uphill or is it the downhill? The downhill, you'll be surprised how fast you're able to unravel everything you've built. Everything you've built. It takes 9 months to get your body to a certain point, and it takes about 2 months to completely unravel that. Downhill is much faster. Downhill is much more painful, though. And you'll get into this place of desperation, a state of despair. And it usually comes with, like I was just mentioning you, it results in rash or extreme behavior. That's what happens every time. This desperation, the Hail Marys, the hopelessness. I don't want to be desperate. I'm not myself when I'm desperate. we do end up making rash behaviors. And if we look at, the whole word of desperation, it's just like, what's an alignment with that? The synonyms, right? It's hopelessness, misery, pain, agony, anguish, torture, anxiety, depression, pain, discouragement. Those are all things that are caused when we're in a desperate state. And it's not like you stumble into desperation. It's because you got knocked off your consistency. You got knocked off doing the right things. And then you snowballed into doing all the wrong things. You maybe go to bed a little later, wake up a little later, thinking that it's not a big deal. But what you don't realize is there's someone going to bed when they should and waking up early to attack the day. And those are the very same people you start comparing yourself to, so now you even feel worse about yourself. What you're failing to realize is not your inability to do it, it's your inconsistency. That's all it is. And allowing yourself some reprieve, allowing yourself to not hold to hold yourself responsible. And let's not get that confused by saying I take all responsibility for my actions, AZ. Like, I'm hard on myself, and that's not the right way to approach it. We could all be harder with ourselves. Is what we do after that, right? After that conversation. That's the key. Not just simply beating yourself and saying, well, you're not doing what you should be doing. I got to hold myself accountable. It's like, okay, that's great. That's great self-talk. That's awesome. Okay, you're full responsible. All right, awesome. But you're still not doing anything about it. That's the problem. You can't desire these great things. It's not going to just fall on your lap. It's not going to happen one day. In fact, it's going to get tougher if you wait for it one day. Because right now you're doing all the wrong things. We all have that ability to create a lifestyle on fire. And listen, I'm not the most successful. I'm not the most fit. There's marriages that are much greater. There's dads that are much better than I am. But the game is not about doing just one thing right. And we're the common denominator here. You're the common denominator. I choose to do all things great. I choose to be consistent in all things. And choosing to be consistent is not up into a vacation, up to an illness, up to an injury. That's just a test. You're supposed to pass tests, not succumb to them. So whatever the reason it is that you're here, understand that it all falls on your lap. That it all falls with the choices you make today. And you're either feeding to a weaker version of yourself in the future or a more powerful you. And you may disregard, well, it's just one day, it's just 2 days, no big deal. But the problem is you're always comparing yourself to that other person that's consistent every day. Of course, you're never going to feel better. Of course, you're never going to close the gap because they're on it every day. And listen, like I'm around too many powerful people to think that you're less than that. I think everyone's capable of being powerful and consistent and fulfilled, happy, financially set. Like, I truly believe it's within everyone's grasp. But it's giving ourselves that reprieve, that leeway. I deserve it. Are you going uphill or are you going down? Like, uphill is tough. It sucks. I was really going uphill this morning. And to top it off, I had leg day today, and it sucked. And I'm sweating. My shirt is drenched. But I'm glad I went. Because if I would have waited one more day or 2 more days, it would have thrown me off completely. And we can't afford to be in that place. Your marriage can't afford that. Your business can definitely not afford that. You have to be on your game, which means do the right things today. Don't give yourself a reprieve just because you had a good marketing plan last week. Just because you did 5 reels and reached out to 10 people. You didn't do enough. Because where you want to go, it requires much more of that, not a reprieve. Unless you want to be there witness to the person you always look up to. You'll never catch them. You'll never become them. Because as you give yourself that reprieve, they're consistent with their game. After a vacation, after an injury, after an illness, they're on their game. They adapt, they pivot, they move. They realize they didn't get this far just to let it all fall apart. You've come too far to let it fall all apart. What a shame, right? Because ultimately, you're going to be the one having to explain this to your family, having to look in the mirror, having to face your realities. And listen, like, we're in the best time in our industry, and you have the ability and the possibility of growing something great here. But you can't half-ass it. You just can't. Because there's people like me out there. That's your competition. And listen, there's people far greater than where I'm at. That's where I'm looking. What are they doing? They're consistent. They're even more consistent. So I'm trying to catch that train. Not the one of complacency and mediocrity, because I know what that brings me. Desperation. And again, I'm dangerous when I'm desperate. I'm irrational when I'm desperate because I'm hopeless. And I begin to feel like everything's outside of me. It's all within me. I'm here to compete. I'm consistent. And I have goals that I have to go after. I have eyes watching me. My daughters are watching me, how I handle obstacles. They're watching me, how I handle the pressure. I don't want to fall apart. What do we teach our kids when we fall apart? That it's okay to give up and to go look for a savior? That it's okay to be anxious? That it's okay to be depressed? They don't need that version of you. They need the person that gets up every day. The person that appreciates themselves and your spouse and them as kids. Like, I'm happy where I'm at. And listen, it's nowhere where I need to be. But the uphill, of course, is a slower path, right? But at least I'm not unraveling, going downhill. So yes, all the answers are within you. Yes, you have what it takes. And for whatever reason you decided to join me, I want to thank you. Whether it's to get inspired, to magnify results, maybe it's just you need to get back on your game in general. And maybe it's just to tell yourself the truth. Look at the truth. It's what you do after this call. It's what you do after the gym. It's what you do after your date night. It's all those things that are keeping you from being great. Because I see it too much. I see the greater versions of yourself, of you, and then I see this pullback. And I'm like, only if you knew. Only if you knew that there was another level beyond that. And I'm not saying I'm at the epitome of anything, but I see it daily. I deal with hundreds of individuals on a daily basis. And I see those that are inspired. And I love it because it fuels me. And then they allow, the past versions of themselves, pull them right back. Gain all that weight back. Destroy their business. Have financial problems again. And it all comes down to giving themselves reprieve. Couldn't get back on their game after that vacation. Couldn't get back on their game after that challenge. So listen, today it's just about getting back on your game. It's about being consistent. It's about magnifying what we want. So it's not going to be easy, but we have what it takes, and you've already demonstrated that before. That's where I'm going. So I have a game plan that I simply just wrote down. And I'm just going to focus on accomplishing these main focuses, these targets. The main focus, which is the one thing that I need to accomplish above all else today. And then just all these little things below that. This is not going to get me ultimately what I want, but it's one step towards it. Because tomorrow I'm going to take another step, and the following day I'm going to take another one. And I've been doing that here consistently, where I'm aware of my actions. And I got to tell you, it's like, it's a great life. And it only gets better. Because if I unravel this, what a shame. What a shame to work this hard only to have it unravel, to fall apart, to destroy my family, to destroy my finances. What a shame that would be. And I've done it. I've done that over and over and over again. Not this time. Come too far. There's no way. And that's why I push. And life has never been better, but I push every day because I remember when I was desperate. I remember when I was hopeless. I remember watching the eyes of my kids when there wasn't a stable home because Carla and I were just clashing. Fear, right? All right, guys. Well, you know what to do. Simple game plan. Just do the small things today, and then we'll work on tomorrow, and the following day, that day. I appreciate you joining me today. I appreciate all your feedback, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.